Bonjour la classe! This is actually day 2. Okay, before I start, a very, very, very happy birthday to someone in our class. I won't mention them by name because I know that other people in other schools are watching this as well. But a very, very happy birthday, and I hope you have had a terrific day. Now, if you remember, there were these 2 men, weren't there? And they were looking for Darwin, and one of them had a gun. So let's see what happens next. Darwin, I whispered, clinging onto the giant dog. He stood in front of me, pinning me into the wall. I looked through the window again and saw the 2 men walk carefully into the barn, one of them still holding the gun. Realizing they'd see me easily, I ducked out of sight. Shh, I said softly as the low rumble of a growl came from Darwin again. My arms and legs were seizing up. I could feel butterflies in my stomach. There's nothing here, I heard one of the men say. Look round the back. What's that? The other said, and I held my breath. Surely they couldn't have heard us. Crouching there, I had no idea what was going on, but I wasn't stupid. I knew that Darwin and Taurus were special. They were unusual. Clearly the men had come for Darwin, but I wasn't sure why exactly. As my thoughts raced around my head and I was unable to make any sense of them, I heard an unearthly noise. Whoa, I heard one of the men exclaim. What the? The strange sound echoed again throughout the barn. It sounded like... I knew exactly what it was. It was Sheba. She was hissing at them. She must be. I'd heard cats hiss before, but this was creepier. It bounced off the walls, so it was impossible to know exactly where the sound was coming from. Get out of here, one of the men said, his voice slightly higher pitched than before. Out! I heard footsteps. Then came a crashing bang, but I hardly dared to look through the window in case they saw us. Open the door! I heard the others say, and I could hear them scrambling and scratching at the door on the opposite side of the barn. The hiss reverberated through the barn again, and the men cried out to each other, snapping with each other to open the door. I'm trying, one of them said. Get off me! I laughed, but I wasn't sure what I was laughing at. It had sounded like a cat, but a cat wouldn't be able to shut those enormous doors. The 2 men now were sobbing and hammering their hands against the door. Let us out! One of them screamed. The door must have come open under their knocks as I heard a creak and a thump of them falling onto the floor. I risked a glance through the window. The door had come open and light beamed into the dusty barn. I saw the 2 men scramble to their feet and stumble away from us as fast as they could. I don't care what Eric does to us, I am not coming back here, one of them said. The other was silent as they scrambled up the hill. When I heard the car start and drive off, I clutched hold of Darwin with relief, and the dog licked my nose with his soft tongue. What happened, Darwin? I noticed my voice was still shaking, even though the 2 men had gone. Who shut them in there? The dog plodded calmly around the barn, and I followed, leaning against the stone of the barn as my legs felt like jelly. We stopped outside the thick door, and I peered into the barn. Nothing was going to make me go in there, after seeing how the 2 men had been treated, but I wanted to see what was in there. Darwin plodded in and looked back at me. No, Darwin, I said, I am not going in. Darwin looked back into the barn and gave a quiet woof. In reply was an angry-sounding meow. Darwin trotted back out again and stood next to me. For a while, I stood there astonished. How could a normal cat like Sheba be able to close that heavy barn door? Perhaps it was the wind, I told myself, but there was very little wind, and the door was so heavy. I walked up and tried to close it. I couldn't even move it a centimetre. How could a little cat close them so quickly? I looked from the barn door to Taurus, who had only just fitted in the barn. He was grazing away as though nothing unusual had happened. Then I looked at Darwin, my mum's giant dog. Nothing made sense. I had wanted answers before, but the appearance of the two armed men made me need answers, and urgently. It felt like it was too nice a day to go inside, so I sat down beside the cottage wall. Darwin came and laid down next to me, resting his head on my legs. I could have fallen asleep as the sun hit the wall and bounced off. It was so warm and sheltered, but questions whirled around my head so I couldn't rest. I closed my eyes to try and block the questions out, but of course this didn't work. It only made them louder in my mind. Mum seemed to be taking forever to come back for lunch, and I began wondering again what Dad was doing. I could ring him, I thought, and went upstairs to fetch my mobile, which I'd left on my bed. Seeing the vase of flowers on the floor reminded me of the strange noises I had heard last night, and I took my phone and ran down the narrow stairs. My home number was saved on the list, even though I could remember it off by heart. I pressed the button and listened to the cold bling, bling sound that started. He rang for a while before Dad answered the phone. Dad, I smiled, although of course he couldn't see me. Oh, it's you. I could tell Dad was smiling because of his voice. How are you? Good, thanks, I said. Dad's voice reminded me of the normal world, the world where animals are a normal size and aren't able to slam heavy doors on people who are carrying guns. Dad, what does Mum do for a living? There was a pause. She's a zoologist, he said finally. Why? What does a zoologist do? They study animals, basically. They need to study all sorts of things about different animals. Why do you ask? It's just... I stopped. It would feel weird to tell Dad what I was thinking. He was so normal. He wouldn't understand what had happened. Nothing. I was just interested. Why don't you ask her if you can go into work with her? He suggested. You've loved animals ever since you could walk. I liked the idea, and I didn't really want to be left on my own in the house again. Dad and I talked for ages, and only stopped when my phone started beeping at me to tell me the credit was running low. Hanging up, I felt like I could deal with anything now. I had been reminded of normal life, and I was ready to ask my mum all the questions that were whirring around my head. When I thought I heard the gate opening, I went out to see Mum coming along the path. Darwin bounded up to her, and I'm sure I could feel the ground shaking. She grinned and waved when she saw me, and I cautiously waved back. So, she began as she got closer, did you have fun on your walk? I nodded, wondering which question to ask first. I'll make you a cup of tea, I said, hoping that a warm drink would make her happier to give me honest answers. Mum looked grateful, and we went into the modern kitchen. So, Mum said again as she sat down with a steaming mug of Earl Grey, what did you do while I was away? I went for a walk, I began as normally as I could. Darwin and I went for a walk and we found a stream. Mum nodded. Then, when we got back, I paused. When we got back, there were these two men who were looking for Darwin. The look on Mum's face changed. Her interest turned into concern, but her voice was quivering. Her interest turned into concern, and I saw worry lines on her forehead. Who were they? She asked, trying to sound as casual as possible, but her voice was quivering slightly. We hid, I explained. I don't know who they were. They got scared and ran away when the barn door shut on them. I don't know how it happened, Mum. They had a gun. They mentioned something about silver bullets. What's going on? Mum nodded and stared down at her tea for a few moments. I was patient. I wanted to press her for more information, but I knew enough about adults to tell me that the way to get answers was to wait patiently. If I was too forceful, Mum would shut down and I wouldn't find out anything. Eventually, she nodded. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, darling. I would never have left you alone if I thought they were going to come here. I need to explain to you what I do for a living." "You're a zoologist," I said, remembering my conversation with Dad. Mum nodded, not looking me in the eye, before she raised her head to look at me. "It's something slightly different to that, actually," she said. And that's the end of the chapter. So I will do chapter 5 tomorrow, and then you're going to have to wait until Monday. Now, next week is the start of the holidays. So I'm going to do 2 chapters a week, one on Monday, one on Thursday, and then the same the following week, and then we'll be back to daily chapters. I don't want to leave it for 2 weeks because you'll forget all about it. So I'm going to keep doing that. Okay, so keep up the good work, guys. I don't have any questions for you to answer about this, although you could say what you think might happen next, or what you think she really does for a living. And you can comment on Dojo or Google Classroom if you like. Right, bye-bye then. Thank you.